My hot button is on what's been happening over the recent weeks. Over the weekend, Kenyans scrutinizing the government portals and looking at the SHA operations and SHA payments. And then, in fact, yesterday, the Cabinet Secretary for Health coming out to say, yeah, there's been something that's been going on and we're doing something about it. So we've seen it. We've seen the public going into the portal that was provided by a government, by Cabinet Secretary Duale, saying we are actually publishing all the facilities and how they are gazetted and how they are operational. And then we saw him guns blazing coming out yesterday and saying, in fact, yes, there are fraudsters and we are nabbing them. We are nabbing them so well that we caught some of them at the door with 10 billion shillings. They were just about to leave, but then we were like, Kujapa. What are we doing about it? We are registering them. We are suspending some of these facilities and so on and so forth. But what you're seeing is a lot of loud noise from some of these corrupt people, and it's corruption fighting back. Now, I want to acknowledge that Duale is actually coming out to speak about it. But the way he is coming out to speak about it is appearing reactionary and responding to public questions and not being proactive. And I'd like to offer just some words of advice here. Just taking a look at what happened in 2020. COVID declared, President Uhuru Kenyatta forms an emergency response committee, says the Cabinet Secretary for Health is in charge. And Mutahi Kagwe takes that mantle and decides that communication will be his weapon. And daily, Mutahi Kagwe had briefings. In fact, we came to know him as Mr. Fellow Kenyans, because we just knew 3 p.m., fellow Kenyans, he'd come on. And what he'd do, Mutahi, is that he'd appear flanked by his 2 CASs, Dr. Masi Mwangangi and Dr. Rashid. Then he'd also bring in the Acting Director General of Health then, Amoth. He'd periodically bring in other cabinet secretaries. Whether it's an issue of let's impose a curfew, the CS for Interior would be there. Schools are closed. People are asking when schools are going to be opened. The CS for Education would be there, and so on and so forth. So we had them coming on and speaking. And what that did was it gave Mutahi the opportunity to take control of the narrative. There were very many issues that were happening then on, a lot of people mistrusting, but he was taking the lead. And I think that's what we need to see with Duale. Stop shadowboxing, Eden, and start just taking the lead. Come out with regular updates. Come with experts, bring in people, bring in the SHA management, whether it's chair and the CEO, bring in the DHA, the Digital Health Agency, bring in KMPDC that's registering and licensing facilities and doctors, bring in the Council of Governors that are in charge of health at devolved units, and so on and so forth. Bring other stakeholders, private hospitals, faith-based hospitals, leadership of the public facilities. Let them come and join you, and when they ask questions, you take up the questions and say, I'm going to respond to this. If there's something that I don't know, can you respond to it, SHA? Can you respond to it, DHA? And so on and so forth. Lead. Do not be shadowboxing. When there are mistakes that have been made and it's by officers, just own up and say, here there was a mistake, we're going to correct it. And then maybe the public will start coming along with you and there'll be buy-in. But this shadowboxing and saying, it's people fighting back, we're the ones who are fighting corruption and everybody else is a corrupt person, it's not going to work. That's my hot button.
As he fights the hot button, again, in the team, I'm the one for receipts and bulldozing government, as they bulldoze us every day. I think maybe the CS should look at a letter, reference number KMPDC LDGF 0201, which was directed to George Mbugwa, the director for Sipili Maternity Nursing Home. And it was an order to close for renovations and a revocation of licenses. Yet when you look at the SHA list, the same hospital that is closed for renovations has millions in allocations by SHA. So noticing that this licensing circulates around our organizations, the ministry as well, it's very ambiguous for the CS to claim that fraudsters are coming from the outside. Most of this data is there and it's signed off by one of his officers. So as he's, we're helping him curb corruption. So that's just a letter I wanted him to notice and maybe follow up on.
I hear you, and I hear what Eric is saying, because we can't underestimate how critical communication is, public communication, because particularly in a docket as critical as health is, and that we are in the rollout phase of SHA, that it's important to carry the people along, especially that there has been so many questions, so many ambiguities, so many things that Kenyans seem not to understand, so that you stay away from always being on the defense, that you can go ahead by communicating what we need to know in advance, unless the only communication is defense, which then becomes a problem.
I mean, this assumes that the problem government has a communication problem. I think it has a bigger problem than communication. And yes, these communicating SHA and this whole madness that they put together is quite complex, because even them, they don't understand exactly how SHA and people, beneficial owners and hospitals, how everything comes together. And this is the frustration I have with government, that communication is supposed to be simple when what you're communicating actually makes sense from internal communication. And I've never seen any internal communication from government actually make sense. So go to the beginning of rolling out of SHA. It was so complex that even the companies that were contracted couldn't explain exactly what they're supposed to do. But they had contracts running into billions. And I think that is the problem of this system as it is today. The inability to have them to be very clear with the public what they're doing. So you have this feeling constantly that they're trying to hide something. And that's the problem. So you then end up in knots, because in the beginning, what was supposed to be a clear thing, we are changing a whole healthcare system because of why? Because either NHIF did not work or NHIF had corruption. Or why did we change NHIF? Yes. And so forth. So that's the problem. Anyway.
I always say that, and this is just, it's government, it's private sector, it's everybody. A concrete part and a core part of implementation of any project is communication. Communication cannot come at the end. You've got to start with communication as an integral part. This is what we are doing. Who do we need to communicate with? If it's internal stakeholders, let them understand. External stakeholders, let them understand. You can't come at the end and now start looking.
Participation is not at the core of that process.